Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football and Seahawky players in the draft on the defensive side of the ball, players that we think would be good fits in Seattle's scheme on the team, and players that we like in the draft. Welcome in.
Yeah, so this will be a fun show. Seahawks need a new defense. For the most part, and there's a lot of really good players in here. They've also got a lot of picks in the right spots for some of these guys. So should be an interesting show, and one we could talk about a lot of guys that would make Seattle a significantly better team.
I agree. You know, I was going to start at the top, and I thought, well, we've talked about Will Anderson and guys like Jalen Carter, a lot in this draft already, and so I kind of skipped over those guys.
I wanted to talk about Jalen Carter.
Sure.
Not so much because you're right, we've talked about him. In his on-field, he's an unblockable defensive tackle who would be your 3-tech and is going to be just an absolutely monster disruptive force. But I wanted to bring him up because at one point he was thought he might be the first overall pick in the draft. Okay, the quarterbacks have kind of taken over that, which they always do. Then he was thought of, being either the first defensive player off the board, maybe the second behind Will Anderson, but he's had the legal problems, where he was caught racing somebody, there was an accident, some people died. There were the original reports was that he left and then came back later. Current reports are that he actually stayed, was released, and then called and asked to come back. And that's why he came back later, he was asked to come back to answer some additional questions. He's pled no contest. All of those legal issues are gone for him, but he gained 9 pounds between the combine when this story first broke and his pro day. And where are you on him? Are you thinking that he's off Seattle's board, which I know you thought at one point, or are you back to him being a potential pick at 5?
This is a very interesting question, Keith, and it really does kind of dictate where Seattle would go in the draft. Clearly he'd help them. He's ideally fitted for what they need. But yeah, I mean, I guess currently he's off my board, not necessarily for the incident, the road incident with him, but the behavior situation with the workout at the combine, not working out, having to leave, and then his pro day, which is the most important work interview of his life so far, and he showed up gaining 9 pounds and then not being able to finish workouts because of being out of condition. That's a big red flag for me. But you take a look at the tape and you take a look at interviews, these scouts, area scouts for Seattle, as well as others, as well as their familiarity with the coaching staff there at Georgia, and talking amongst all of that. They've got big decisions to make where he's at with his mental game, which is the big factor here. And so I originally thought Seattle would have him off their board just because of the Malik McDowell situation that they went through. And when you're taking a shot at this early in the draft, you want to make sure character concerns are not part of the equation. And so that's a big question mark. And I've heard differing things about Seattle being perfectly fine and clear with Jalen Carter, and they would be happy to select him in this draft he's off their board. And so I'm not exactly sure. For me, I'm in the same boat. I don't have access to all that information. This is one of the areas, Keith, where we do not have access that the team does. And so I don't know if the team has done all their work and has feels good about the pick because of the game film and the play on the field and these other issues. They feel like the weight gain between the combine and his pro day were understandable given conversations they've had with Georgia's coach and some of the people around him. The area scouts know him pretty well by now. Maybe, that whole incident and the court date and all that stuff just really took his mind off football, and maybe rightly so. Who knows? And so if you've got a player that you can still work with and comes into your system and really helps your team, that's really what it's all about in the NFL. And so it's a hard one. And I don't think we're going to know until draft day where he's selected. If he ends up falling out of the top 10, maybe back to 20 or something, and multiple teams are passing on him, then we know. If Seattle takes him at 5 or drops back from 5 to 6 or 7 or 8, and then he's there and they take him, then we know that he's good to go. So it's up to them. Just got to trust the process.
That's I don't even know what to think on it, because I was all in on Jalen Carter from his tape.
I was too.
And then the stuff happened with the combine and the initial reports of him like just leaving the scene where someone he knew died.
Yeah, big time red flag.
Like I was like, oh no, this guy's there's no interest. But that's, those things seem to be off the table, but then it's like this workout part. And I honestly just don't know where to roll with any of that. I'm just always, like
is his heart in football.
Yeah. And even with all the legal stuff taken care of, do you trust him?
He was also caught speeding. I'll just say this. There was another speeding incident prior to the accident in 2022 where he was speeding at like 90 miles an hour in a 45.
Mm.
And so there's some things here that they would have to work through and bring him into the fold if they choose. He would need some mentoring and some coaching, and he would need to mature a little bit. And do you want to do that with the top 10 pick? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there is the Malik McDowell situation, and
then you're going to hand him, he's probably going to get, if he's a top 10 pick, he's probably going to get $10 million signing bonus in when he signs his contract, and you're going to turn over that kind of money to a guy that has maturity issues and character concerns
and has made choices like racing cars at 140 some miles an hour. And in the very recent past, I have a hard time with it, but goddamn, he's a good football player.
Yeah, but some things you just have to pass on. And you and I both know
someone else's problem
for a fact that we've needed a disruptor in the center of our defense for a decade, and he would be the guy. And so, and if you pass, for a fact that these concerns were bigger than football, and you gotta go a different direction. So anyway, that's the deal with him. That's why I was kind of skip over it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it though, because it is a Seahawky type player. It's a player that fits their scheme as a nose tackle and a 3-tech and an edge player. He's scheme diverse. He can play all across the line for you,
and he's just unblockable.
And a guy you'd never take off the field. He would literally play almost 100% of the snaps every single game and be a fixture in your defense that you build around. He's that piece for years to come. So if they make the pick, they've done their research. If they don't make the pick, they've done their research. So,
cool.
Interesting. All right. So the first player on my list that I want to talk about was Christian Gonzalez. Probably not a player that they're going to pick at 5, but worthy of the conversation because he's the perfect player in Seattle's scheme to go against complement Tariq Woolen on the other side. He'd be an inexpensive player. In as far as their corners are concerned, they're starting corners and have one of the best starting corner tandems in the NFL with Christian Gonzalez at 6'1", 200 pounds, 32-inch arms, super athletic, great corner already as far as skill set is concerned. So he'd be able to come in and start right away. He would be a great pick.
Yeah. And I think that, talk about a luxury pick though. You've already got a Pro Bowl corner. You've got a good guy who fits your scheme perfectly on the other side. And then you're going to go get the best cornerback in the draft, one of the better prospects we've seen in the last few years, to mix that up and be like, yeah, sure, go ahead, try and throw on us.
There are scenarios in the draft where things don't work out at the top. You've got 4 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks go in the top 3, and Bryce Young and like a Tyree Wilson or something are available to you, and Jalen Carter at 5, and you don't want to go in that direction. And so you're trying to move back, and there's nobody that wants to move up for Bryce Young, and you're stuck. You got to make the pick. And so do you start reaching then for different players? And Christian Gonzalez would be the safe pick at that spot where you at least come out with an impact starter day one.
Yeah. Day one, a very high end starter. Guy has the guy is a comparable prospect to Sauce Gardner last year.
Yeah. All right. So who's on your board?
I was actually going to go in a similar direction with what you're talking about. I wasn't going to go with Gonzalez because I don't think he's the pick, just because he'll be so high up there. But you're right about the situation of getting stuck at 5 without the guys you want. But I was thinking more along the lines of Joey Porter Jr. This is after a trade back, because you end up in that situation and where you're just not interested in the guys that are there. So you move back to 11 and get an extra second round pick or something in there. And then, okay, well, who's the best player available at this spot? And to me, that would probably be Joey Porter Jr., who's another cornerback. A little super long, athletic, isn't quite as fast as Gonzalez, but plays really smart and is still fast. Gonzalez is just elite, but he's the number 2 cornerback in this draft, and also a very high end prospect. And I just think that he would be, to me, that if you're going to take a cornerback because of the situation, I'd rather have it be Joey Porter. And the reason isn't the player, it's because you would take Joey Porter after you've moved back and got another second round pick. And you'd still get an elite player.
Yeah. Seattle's familiar with his dad. His dad played for the Pittsburgh Steelers against us in the Super Bowl in 2005.
Yep.
So there's that. I like it. He's a smart player, physical, fast enough, 4.46. And
is Joey Porter Sr. a Hall of Famer?
Yeah. Well, I think so, as a linebacker. Yeah.
I thought he was. And but I'm seeing a lot of His dad played linebacker for the Steelers, but I'm like, it shouldn't these like the profiles when they mention that say Hall of Fame linebacker. So then I question whether my memory is faulty or not, and it probably
Yeah.
is. So
Yeah, I can't remember for sure. I just remember the part where, yeah, he played for Pittsburgh. Yeah, but this guy's ready to go. He's going to immediately come in and help you. Probably be this, the second best corner on the roster day one, and it would be a great pick. I like it. This is a guy that could be available in that 20 range potentially if he were to fall a little bit, but he's going to be a coveted guy just based on the athletics traits and scheme diversity, because he can play zone and press. Another guy in that range, the 20 range, is Lucas Van Ness for me.
I knew you were going to bring him up.
A bigger defensive end that's ascending, that's on the uptake. Looked really good and skilled at the combine. Had great tape. Didn't really start all the time at Iowa, but just a real nice player. Ran a 4.58 at 6'5", 272 pounds, 34-inch arms, super long, athletic. Three cone was 7.02, which is elite at that size. He's just a guy that I think could work into a role. I think he can fit in a 3-4 as well as a 4-3 as a base defensive end, like a 5 tech. He's going to have a similar role for you in a 3-4, playing on the end, maybe build up a little bit, add 5 or 10 pounds.
And he's got the frame.
He does.
To add.
He looks like a cyborg.
He could easily add 10 to 15 pounds more, and go from being a guy that plays at 5 tech to a guy that plays at 3 and will dominate it either.
Yeah. He's, it's a splash move. I think you get this. There's players like this available in the second and third round as well. Just really depends on the way the draft board's falling and how they value him and so forth. Another player at this particular spot in the draft, I think might even go slightly earlier, that I think Seattle is going to love is Nolan Smith, Keith.
Yes.
Is he on your list?
He's on my list.
Yeah, I figured.
I kind of knew that Lucas Van Ness would be on yours, so picking in that same area, I selected Nolan Smith to put on mine.
Yeah, Nolan's on my list too. He's the next guy I was going to talk about, but go ahead.
I mean, I worry that you're going to play a Georgia tax at some point on some of these guys because the defense that they play on is so good. But
he stood out though.
He did. So he's 6'2", 238. So he is not the 280-pound guy that Van Ness was. He's not playing your 5 tech. This guy's lining up at outside linebacker. He's coming off the edge, but as a 4.39, this is wide receiver speed, and gonna be coming off the edge around the corner with great bend. He's gonna be really hard to stop coming off that edge, and has that speed and athleticism to do all the other outside linebacker things that you want in the 3-4.
Yeah, Keith, I had mentioned to you prior to us recording today about the idea of him being a Seahawky player and kind of an ideal player that Pete Carroll would absolutely, completely love. And also, I was thinking about Jamal Adams. And you know how Jamal Adams moves around in the scheme and often viewed as a strong side linebacker type player in a smaller, even strong safety body. Jamal Adams doesn't want to wrap up necessarily. He wants to hit you. He wants to be physical. They ask him to drop back into coverage, although his skill set is not that. Nolan Smith has the skill set Jamal Adams possesses, but the body to take the punishment. And so for me, if they brought Nolan Smith in, they'd use him in a similar way that they used Jamal Adams in the first year that Jamal Adams was here, rushing the passer off the edge on blitz situations or whatever. He's flying around the edge, but he's such a good player, you kind of want to keep him on the field. So they'd move him around a little bit. He'd play in the box. He'd come up, move around on the defense. He'd be that chess piece, that athlete that you have sometimes on the defensive side of the ball. And in that Jamal Adams type role, I think that they were really hoping to use last year again. And to me, that's where his value is.
Yeah, I mean, he's super athletic, super fast, just clobbers people. But you're right. He outweighs Jamal Adams by 40 pounds.
Well, yeah, 30. Yeah, Jamal Adams is 208 now.
Okay. Still, he outweighs him by 30 pounds.
Yeah, and he still has the athleticism that matches Jamal Adams.
So I think you bring him up and you let him, fly around and do things. But I mean, him coming off the edge with that speed is crazy. Him coming up the middle with that speed on a twist or something, on a blitz, and
he's a weapon.
Guards are not going to be able to mirror what he does.
Well, he's a physical. He's physical. He's a physical player too. So it's not like he's just that frame is lanky or anything. He's 6'2", 238. He looks like a linebacker, but he moves like a very fast safety. And so, and he drops back into coverage. He's got good coverage skills, better coverage skills than Jamal Adams possesses right now. So for me, this is a larger, faster, bigger Jamal Adams in Seattle's scheme. And I think Pete Carroll would just drool over this pick if he came.
Yeah, I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. And that's why I mean, that speed at 240 pounds is just crazy.
Yeah.
And this is a defense that needs to continue to get faster. Team speed was a problem a couple of years ago, got better last year. At this point, it looks like it may, that was part of the reason why Bobby Wagner was not brought back a year ago, was because they were trying to improve team speed. Well, Wagner's now back again. And they need guys with some speed. So I think that this is a good pick. Anyways, who's your next guy?
I had Ade, the defensive end, 6'2", 282 out of Northwestern, ran a 4.49 at the combine, looked like one of the most athletic players at the combine, kind of coming on draft boards. He would move inside in Seattle's scheme as a 3-tech. At that size, has room to put on a little bit more, but he's kind of a shorter, stout player, but super, super athletic. Has all the pass rush repertoire you want. Agility wise, he's got the ability to go sideline to sideline for you, and a nice wingspan, even with 32-inch arms. He's got 81 and 5/8 inch wingspan, so very broad shoulder kind of a guy. Fun prospect.
Yeah, guy I like him a lot. It's interesting because most of my guys, I'm looking at my list. I'm like, they're all defensive linemen, aren't they?
It's interesting. When you go through the big board, Keith, this is a much easier process for me on the defensive side than we did on the offense. On the offense, I struggled to find some players that kind of really fit, and on the defense, there's way more players that are going to be on my list that are kind of Seahawks oriented players. It's going to be a fun draft on the defensive side for sure.
Yeah. So there's guys that names that are I'm sure are very familiar to our listeners, like Mozzie Smith out of Michigan. Super just crazy athletic defensive tackle at 323 pounds. Like guy that's going to be an all-world nose tackle. Because he's big, he's impossible to move, but he's also got that explosiveness to get upfield and be disruptive. And I almost he's not on my list, but he is on my every list I make.
He is the same. I did the same thing.
So I just see him as that's like the easiest pick. It's almost it's almost too easy when you're doing a mock draft to get him to Seattle, because
Yeah.
he's just Seahawky and needy and all of that.
He's another player that's probably going to end up in the first round. That every mock I do is he's available at 37. I just don't think he's going to be available at 37. I think somebody's going to go up and get him. And Seattle could be one of those teams. You get through day one and he's sitting there at first pick off the board and in the second round. I could see Seattle making that move from 37 to 33 and getting him.
Yeah. But so in similar position, same position, but a very different player. Siaki Ika, out of Baylor, defensive tackle, 6'3", 335. And this is a guy that isn't going to dominate you with that pure athleticism, explosiveness. He's just huge, wide player with a great ankle, controls the middle of any defense. Not going to be there on third and long. He's going to be a guy that they can take off the field. He's a first and second down player. But honestly, that's okay. That's what you're looking for in a nose tackle anyway. And the guy's just so big and so such an immovable force at nose tackle. I just think that,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just think that he's a great fit and is much more likely to be in a draftable spot, like, down in the 40s or 50s.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Seattle really hops on this thing. He's definitely a gap control player, complete to get for you nose tackle, obviously. He's going to improve your run defense immediately. You mentioned the fact that he's not going to give you much as far as the interior push, but that's not what his job is going to be in the NFL. He's going to be gap controlling those gaps, taking on double teams, freeing up the middle for Bobby Wagner and company to make plays behind the line of scrimmage, to come up and fill holes and so forth. So, I like it. Seattle's going to be in the market, I think, for at least 2 defensive linemen in this draft. And one of them is going to be a nose tackle, because we do not have a single healthy nose tackle on this roster.
Yeah.
Okay. My next guy was J.L. Skinner, the strong safety out of Boise State, 4.55 40. This is a draft that doesn't have a lot of premier safety talent available. This is one of those players that can come up and really hits with authority, good size, 6'4", 209. Everyone's going to kind of be reminded of Cam Chancellor as far as the stature and the play that he has. He's going to need to come up to the competition level at Boise State. He wasn't seeing that. So players are going to be faster, stronger, bigger in the NFL than he's used to. And so he's going to need to adapt, but he should be sitting there somewhere in the 3rd round range. And if he is, he might be the type of player Seattle would grab.
Oh yeah. At his size, like, people are going to make the Cam Chancellor like comparisons because of Seattle, but I don't know. I see Chancellor was so unique. It wasn't just his size and whatnot, but it was some of the other stuff that he did, and his ability to be a linebacker when needed, and his ability to, even though he was kind of bad at coverage early in his career, later in his career, he had refined his coverage skills and was actually pretty good and very underrated as a coverage guy before his injury. So I see him as an early career Cam. We'll see if he has the potential to develop into the great player that Cam became.
Absolutely.
But I would, that's kind of an unfair, like, here, you have to go be Cam Chancellor to a guy that's going to be selected, I think in the 3rd or 4th round.
I agree.
So let's see where to go next. So many guys to choose from, because my list of 10, I'm like, ooh,
I have a bonus. I literally wrote bonus player and added one. So
I've got 10, but then I'm like, we probably shouldn't include like Mozzie Smith. Don't include him because we've talked about him a lot.
Right.
But it's there. How about Moro Ojomo?
Yeah.
Ojomo.
Yeah.
a three tech defensive tackle, 6'3", 292. So he's not a nose tackle, but he's a guy that is powerful. That's just what comes to mind. Just a guy
And
that's
long.
he's long, he's powerful. He's going to take guards and centers that try and take him on and drive them into the backfield, screwing up running plays. Because there's not, the running lane's not going to be there, because he will have pushed the guard back into the running back. And he just is high energy, incredible motor. Yeah, just a guy that I think that would fit in really well with what Seattle wants to do as a, in terms of where they have guys two gap, and his strength and his
Yes.
just ability to just overpower guards.
And he plays like that on every play. So he doesn't take
Yes.
plays off. That's the nice thing about this guy.
Yeah. Just a guy that can overpower guards, 330-pound guards, and shed blocks to make tackles at the line and that kind of stuff. Like, if Seattle wants to go that route where they're doing a lot of two gapping, this is a guy that I think fits really well.
And available probably in the 3rd or 4th round.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're missing out on guys early, don't sweat, Seahawks fans. There's other players in this draft that have got some really good skills. Another player I'll talk about now, I was going to talk about somebody else first, but Byron Young out of Alabama, another player in the same sort of mold.
Mm-hmm.
That I think the Seahawks are going to be interested in. 294 pounds, 6'3", 34 and 3/8 inch arms. So he's got that long wingspan for you. Super athletic, comes from a big school, solid core, all that kind of stuff. Good, tenacious worker. Had a great combine, and Senior Bowl. So Seahawks are going to probably like that guy. The other guy I was going to talk about was a cornerback, Darius Rush. Fallen in love with this corner.
He's got a fantastic name. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Got a fantastic name. Sounds like a lead guitarist for some sort of like
Metal
Led
band.
Zeppelin
Yeah.
cover band. Absolutely.
Yeah, 6'2", 198 pounds, 33 and 3/8 inch arms. Seahawks going to love that length at that position. Ran a 4.36 40, 35-inch vertical and a 1.51 split. So super quick burst off the snap. I really like his ball skills and his ability to kind of be in position and mirror, stay step for step with guys, quick hips. He turns and runs really well. So it's just about it. It's a guy that you're going to bring in from South Carolina. So it's not a big school program. You're going to bring him in. He's going to learn your system. He's going to work in. He's going to make the roster. He's going to play special teams right away, and develop. So you can imagine getting this guy. He's rising up. So he's got a 3rd round, 4th round grade. I would imagine he's probably going to go in the 3rd round based on his athletic upside and attributes. And that's where you'd have to get him.
Yeah. I'd support that pick. That's a good player. And someone who I really like.
Yeah.
Didn't realize he was on your radar. But yeah, definitely a guy I like. I'm going to go back to the defensive line. All of my players are defensive linemen.
I've got a couple coming up,
because that's what clearly I want Seattle to do. They need defensive linemen. I'd love for them to get a linebacker, but honestly, this isn't a great middle linebacker draft. Guy that I don't think you and I have talked about yet in all of the draft shows that we've done, Carl Brooks, defensive tackle out of Bowling Green, 6'3", 303. He's not a nose tackle. He's a 3 tech. Got shorter arms than most teams would like. So I think he's going to drop a bit, but he plays quick. His first step is Michael Bennett quick. And that is going to make a big difference at the next level. And I mean, Michael Bennett was undrafted as a defensive end. His rookie year, the Seahawks moved him inside to defensive tackle where he was undersized, but that first quick step got him into the backfield, and he turned that into a great career, a long, great career.
Yeah. I like it. I like this. He comes from a smaller school, obviously Bowling Green. But you're right, the burst, the quickness, the speed at 303, 6'3", good tester at the combine. So I like it. I mean, it's a middle round pick, like a fourth round, but that's kind of where you want to get guys like this and bring them in and let them learn behind Jerron Reed, and company, and just give him a chance to be on your roster.
Makes me think of a younger Jerron Reed, like just a guy with quickness and size, and has the potential to be an interior pass rusher, which this team needs.
Yes. This is the kind of pick that you love to have in the fourth round. Guys with upside. Nobody's heard about them, but can come in, make your roster, play special teams, and develop. I got a similar player in Jalen Redmond, the defensive lineman out of the University of Oklahoma. 291, ran a 4.8 140 at that size, which is outstanding for a three tech. And he's a little older prospect. Went to the Senior Bowl though. They love those guys. He's 24 years old. Not as big of a wingspan as Carl Brooks. I would actually prefer Carl Brooks as a prospect over this player, but I understand he had a good Senior Bowl. He had a good combine, looked really nice as a prospect at the combine, and agility, agility drills and so forth. So it's another player that you take a flyer on in the fifth round. That Seattle's got 2 fifth round picks. I would imagine this is the type of player that they are looking for at that spot. Yeah,
I like that.
I had another one too.
Go for it.
Gerard Clark, the nose tackle, at 335, 340 pounds, at 6'4", and ran a 4.25 40. He's a guy that's going to just two gap for you and take up space in the middle.
5.25 40.
5.25. Yeah,
not 4.25. Because if you ran a 4.25, sorry, a 4.25 at that, we're talking about world records. And
right.
Yeah.
But he's a plotter. Short shuttle was crap at 4.83. His 10-yard split was ridiculous at 1.82, which is as slow as a molasses. He jumped 27 inches on his vertical, and his broad jump was almost 100 inches. And so, agility wise, this guy is not great. 10 percentile poor as far as that. But the play on the field is that this guy just shuts down the run game, and that's kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah. How about Dante Stills?
That's a guy I haven't looked at too much.
Defensive tackle out of West Virginia, 6'3", 286. So you're looking as a 3-4 defensive end. He's got some really, he's got some decent athletic scores. They're not going to overwhelm you. Like a 4.85 40 is good for a guy his size, but it's not great. His 3-cone of 7.38 is really good for a guy his size. He's got some agility. But he's a guy that doesn't pop off the tape. He doesn't look like he's going to be a 3 tech because he just doesn't have that anchor to hold up against the run there. But you put him at the 5 tech, and he maybe doesn't have quite the get off to get around the edge. So people are going to be, oh, well, he's kind of a guy without a position. But what he is a guy with good athleticism, great agility, who you can put in different places on the line and you play other guys off of him. Because you can loop defensive or outside linebackers inside of him. on passing situations, you could have him come inside where the nose would be and just try and beat the center and, things like that. You can move him around. He's a great rotational piece that has the potential to be disruptive all the time because he's quick and has good size. So I think that he's a guy that is more of a weapon defensively than a true, stick him in one position and leave him there. But I think that you want your defensive front seven to be a little creative and do some fun stuff. And if you're going to do that, you need guys like this on your field. So
Nice.
I think he'd be a great fit. And I honestly, because of his lack of true position, like he's just kind of that tweeter, he's going to drop further than he should and be available, round 4, round 5, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Speaking of tweeners, I picked safety Ronnie Hickman out of Ohio State on my list just because of the kind of player that he is. I think he's a Seahawky type player at 6 foot, 203 pounds, but he's a strong safety. He's got 4.45 speed, but he's more stout than he is long and lanky. Doesn't have that makeup speed that you want on the back end, but he's got sideline to sideline ability. And he can hit you. He's tenacious that way. Good enough in coverage, but at 6 foot matchups across the middle with tight ends and so forth, there might be a problem. So you're taking a look at him in the 5th, 6th round range. But he's got that big time school experience at Ohio State. It's taken over 700 snaps in 2 straight seasons. So he's a valued contributor for them. He's going to be a special teams guy. That's the type of player that you're looking for in that range.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have one more left. That's my 11th bonus player.
Go for it.
Terrell Smith, cornerback. Terrell Smith out of Minnesota, 6'1.5 inches, 204 pounds, 32 7/8 arms, super athletic guy. Ran a 4.41 40, 34-inch vert, 10-foot broad jump. 7.02 on the 3 cone and 4.3 on the short shuttle, which are really good at that spot. And I just think he's kind of a great size, speed, toughness, technique guy that comes from a really nice program with, doesn't have a lot of on the ball production as far as pass breakups and interceptions and so forth. So he's kind of an overlooked guy. When you take a look at big boards, he's in that 7th round range, anywhere from pick 200 to 250. But a guy that's got that thing that you're looking for as far as the size and the speed and the athleticism and the physicality on coming up and making tackles, I think Seattle would be attracted to. He's a good tackler, solid in that area and so forth. And if they think they can develop the other things, it would be a solid pick at that range.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a bonus one for you.
Okay.
And I'm going to move off the defensive line for the first time since very early in the show. Yasir Abdullah, linebacker out of Louisville. 6'1", 237, is a guy that you can see anywhere from the 4th round to not drafted, depending on where you look. Teams that he's a guy that can do a lot of different stuff. He'll be an instant special teams like star with his speed, 4.47 at that size, but he's got great explosive traits as well.
Nice.
Teams will be worried that he's not quite long enough, big enough at 6'1" with only 32 3/8 arms to, to be that edge rusher guy. But I don't think of him as that edge rusher guy. I think he's a guy that moves inside, plays middle linebacker, and has that speed and just natural instincts, flows to the ball, gets after players, is always around the ball. No matter what's going on, he's always around the ball, sideline to sideline speed. Like, I just think he's a great fit as an interior linebacker in a 3-4.
If you miss out on Nolan Smith in this draft, this guy's a poor man's Nolan Smith.
Yeah, he is. And people are talking about him as a 7th rounder or undrafted. I think he's going to be more like a 5th rounder, but um, I think he's got potential to be an absolute mainstay on your defense.
Yeah, no, that's a nice
You just got
find,
to make
Keith.
sure that you figure out how to use them and use them right. Because
Linebackers in this draft, I don't know they're going to be particularly special. There are some good prospects and good candidates for in the linebacker area if you go early, and then there's kind of a dead spot in the draft where there's, after the fourth round, the talent really seems to drop off. This, if he's available out there, this is one of the more athletic and talented guys I think that'll be available in that range. And yeah, good find. I've overlooked him quite a bit, actually. Haven't really mocked him to any of my on any of my mocks, or really looked at his athleticism until just now. And yeah, that's good.
honestly, I wouldn't have probably noticed him and had him on my radar if it hadn't been for us doing our mock drafts, because I got late in one and I didn't have a linebacker, and Seattle needs freaking linebackers like crazy. And so I started looking and doing some research on guys that I hadn't looked at before. And this came across Abdullah, and I like what I see in his tape and athleticism, and I think he's going to be a guy that most people haven't heard of, but is a good solid pro.
Yeah. I love shows like this where we just kind of free range and go back and forth. When you go through the process leading up to the draft, you're just looking at hundreds of players over, 3 or 4 month period to evaluate and kind of figure this all out. It's a fun thing that Keith and I have done, not just this year, but for years now. I was thinking back, I had a conversation with another guy the other day about how long I've really been involved in looking at the draft and studying players and prospects and trying to figure it all out. And the year that came into my brain was 1985. And I've just been kind of doing the draft with my dad at first, kind of getting into that, trying to anticipate the picks ahead of time is a fun thing to do. Buying the draft magazines you used to be able to buy at Safeway on the magazine rack. Go in there and look through all the picks and all the players prior to the draft, so you kind of knew what was going on. And started with that, and then ESPN started right around the same time, Mel Kiper, all that stuff. And so we've been doing this for a while, and it's surprising how skilled you get at trying to figure this out. Now, when you go through the draft, the idea isn't necessarily hitting on every pick that you're mocking or you're picking, but you're looking for the type of player that Seattle would do, because you've got 32 other teams. You're not going to hit on everything, but you are kind of hitting on the process, the evaluation part, where you recognize certain players would be good fits on your scheme and in your team. And generally you can hit 1 or 2 picks out of 10. You're doing pretty good. But the type of players and the different spots in the draft, you're hitting quite a few of those. So,
well, and I think one of the things that that I've done in doing this, because like I'm like you, I've always been kind of interested, read stuff, but it was other people's work, right? And it was just getting to know what scouts and draft guys did up until I'll say 15 years ago. And it was probably before that, but in real earnest, once I started, being a writer and covering things myself, getting into the process, but I was trying to be more metacognitive about it and not just be like, ooh, what do I know about this player? But it's like, what am I seeing compared to what other people are seeing? And what does that mean both as as an evaluator, but also what I'm going to see at the next level? And there are certain positions that I found out fairly quickly that I was good at evaluating, and other ones where I was terrible. And I, to this day, even through all the process and all of the going back and looking at my notes from 4 years ago to see how those people developed, whatever, I'm not a very good evaluator at running back. I'm just not. Now the NFL as a whole is kind of bad at it. but I'm worse. Wide receiver is not my best position either. But I'm good at the offensive line. Like I have been really good at the offensive line. I think it's safe to say if you go through and you can go back and look at the stuff I've written, it's on the web out there. And some of the other positions, linebacker, and quarterback. There are things that I do well and things that I don't. And I don't try to hide from the things that I don't do well. I try and admit it and be like, this is what I see on a running back, but take it with a grain of salt because it is my weakest position. And I continue to try and learn and I get better, but at the same time, like, I don't know. But it's a fun process and it is
fun.
I think if you want to get into this and you want to be a draft writer and you want to, have a blog and that kind of stuff, don't act like you're right all the time. The people who do that, I understand why they think they have to do that, but they don't. The people who are well-respected, especially well-respected within the draft community, are those that admit what they're wrong, be like, wow, I really screwed that up. Here's what I saw and what I need to take away from this and what I need to, how I need to learn going forward. Admit that when you don't get things right, don't try and be right all the time. And it really does help. It helps you as an evaluator, but it also actually gives you more credibility than less. So
I agree. I agree. Admitting your weaknesses is not a weakness. I wanted to let everyone know a couple of shows in advance. So what we're doing, risers and fallers in the draft is on the agenda. On the next show, we're going to do our second to last mock draft coming up this next week, and take a looking at mid to late round prospects the Seahawks could look at. We've taken a look at some of those and some of the names we've mentioned today, but we're going to do that.
We did a lot of mids, very few late round round prospects today. But that gets to be, I mean, you get lost in the weeds there. There's so many guys.
There are
so many guys.
and one of the shows coming up mid-April is what will the Seahawks do with the 5th pick? Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about that in our offensive prospect show before this, but that's an interesting conversation. I think the closer you get to the draft, the easier that conversation is, and the more bewildering it can also be as well, because if there's no information leaking out at all, sometimes you just have no idea. And right now I have no idea.
Yeah, they could go in so many different directions.
Yeah.
My guess is they sit there and wait until CJ Stroud is selected, whether that be the first overall pick, or it could have been, we could actually find out that he's going to be the first overall pick 2 weeks early.
Yes, we could.
And then they have plans B through J already lined up. And they just go from there. But it may just be a sit and wait. Wouldn't just wait to see what happens with Stroud or Anderson. And that ends up dictating everything else. Everything else after that.
I agree. Dominoes will fall in a certain order. And it happens every year that way. And Seattle's at 5, which just makes it a lot of fun, because Seattle's got ammunition to move up if they choose. Like if they've identified a guy and this is the draft, this is the year that they make a play on whatever it is, they have ammunition to move up. Now, do they have a trade partner? We'll talk about all that kind of stuff. Will they move back because the board falls in a certain way? Do they have a trade partner for that? Do they get stuck and have to make the pick? What happens then? All that is fun to talk about. All right, let's get out of here. It was a great show. Thanks for coming in and sharing all that. That was awesome. You can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. Find myself at NW Seahawk, and find the show on your favorite podcast platform. Hit that subscribe button. YouTube channel, same thing. We'd really appreciate it. Again, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you as we lead up to draft weekend on the 27th. So until then, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.